The invitation was meant to humiliate her. When Daniel Whitmore sealed the ivory envelope and handed it to the courier, he smiled, a cold, satisfied smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Make sure Mrs. Grace Whitmore receives it personally," he said, adjusting the gold cufflinks that matched his tailored tuxedo. "I wouldn't want her to miss my big day." Across town, in a small rented apartment above a grocery store, Grace Whitmore was folding laundry when the knock came. She opened the door to find a sharply dressed courier holding an envelope with her name embossed in gold. She already knew what it was. Daniel was getting married again. Her fingers trembled slightly as she opened the envelope. The card inside gleamed with elegance. "Daniel Whitmore and Olivia Sterling request the honor of your presence." Grace let out a soft, shaky breath. She knew Daniel, this wasn't kindness, this wasn't closure. This was revenge. Years ago, they had stood in a tiny church with peeling paint and broken pews, promising to love each other for better or worse. Back then, Daniel had nothing but dreams and debt. Grace had worked 2 jobs while pregnant, standing on swollen feet for hours so he could finish his business degree. She believed in him when no one else did. But success changed him. When Daniel's tech startup exploded into a multi-million-dollar empire, the man who once cried over unpaid bills transformed into someone unrecognizable. Expensive suits replaced thrift store jackets. Luxury cars replaced their old pickup truck. And slowly, Grace, along with the triplets she carried, became an inconvenience to his polished image. The day he asked for a divorce, he didn't even look her in the eyes. "You don't fit into my world anymore, Grace," he said flatly. "I'll provide financially. You'll be comfortable." Comfortable. As if comfort could replace love. As if money could bandage the wound of abandonment. She refused his excessive settlement. Pride. Maybe. But more than that, it was dignity. She took only what she needed for their 3 children, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and moved away quietly. Daniel told everyone she couldn't handle the pressure of his success. He never mentioned the nights she stayed up feeding 3 crying bobbies alone. He never mentioned how she sold her wedding ring to pay for Matthew's surgery when Daniel forgot to transfer the funds on time. And now he wanted her at his wedding. Grace stared at the invitation for a long time. Her sons, now 7 years old, peeked over her shoulder. "Is it from Dad?" Mark asked softly. "Yes," Grace replied. "Are we going?" Luke added. She hesitated. This could hurt them, seeing their father with another woman, surrounded by wealth and cameras. Daniel's wedding was all over social media. He was marrying Olivia Sterling, daughter of a powerful real estate mogul. It was a spectacle. Grace knelt down and looked at her sons, 3 identical faces, 3 different souls. Matthew was thoughtful and quiet. Mark was sensitive and artistic. Luke was bold and protective. "We're going," she said finally. "Not for Daniel. For closure. For dignity. For truth." The morning of the wedding, Daniel stood in front of a mirror inside a grand cathedral adorned with white roses and crystal chandeliers. Reporters waited outside. Influencers posted live updates. Everything was perfect. "Did your ex-wife RSVP?" Olivia asked casually, adjusting her diamond necklace. Daniel smirked. "Oh, she'll come. She won't be able to resist seeing what she lost." He imagined Grace arriving in old clothes, perhaps embarrassed. He pictured the whispers, the comparisons. He wanted her to see how high he had risen. But outside the cathedral, something unexpected happened. A sleek black limousine pulled up to the red carpet. Guests turned. Photographers aimed their cameras. The door opened, and Grace stepped out. She wasn't wearing designer labels plastered with logos. She wore a simple, elegant navy blue gown that flowed gracefully around her. Her hair was styled softly, framing a face that radiated quiet confidence. Then 3 small boys stepped out behind her, each dressed in matching tailored suits. The crowd gasped. "Are those Daniel's sons?" someone whispered. The triplets walked beside their mother, heads held high. Daniel froze at the altar when he heard the murmurs. He turned, and his breath caught in his throat. Grace wasn't the broken woman he remembered leaving. She looked powerful, not because of wealth, but because of peace. What Daniel didn't know was what had happened in the years since the divorce. When Grace moved away, she struggled. There were months when the rent barely got paid. She worked as a nurse's assistant during the day and studied online at night, determined to finish the medical degree she had paused for Daniel's dreams. There were nights she cried silently, overwhelmed and exhausted. But every time she felt like giving up, 3 small voices would call her mommy and wrap their arms around her. She built strength from love. 2 years ago, she graduated as a pediatric surgeon. Her story, single mother of triplets who returned to school and graduated with honors, was featured in a local newspaper. A nonprofit foundation offered her a partnership opportunity in a new children's hospital. She didn't chase fame. She chased purpose. And purpose elevated her higher than Daniel's money ever could. As she walked into the cathedral, whispers followed. "Isn't she the doctor who started that children's charity? I read about her. She's incredible." Olivia's smile stiffened. Daniel stepped down from the altar before the ceremony began. "Grace," he said, trying to regain control, "I didn't expect all this." Grace tilted her head slightly. "You invited me." His eyes flickered to the boys. "You look well." "I am well," she replied calmly. Matthew stepped forward. "Hi, Dad." The word hit Daniel harder than he expected. He had sent gifts, paid for things, but he hadn't been present. Mark looked around the cathedral. "It's pretty." Luke added bluntly, "Mom's hospital is bigger." A few guests chuckled. Daniel felt something unfamiliar: shame. The ceremony began shortly after, but something had shifted. Daniel couldn't focus. His vows sounded hollow in his own ears. He kept glancing toward Grace and the boys sitting quietly in the third row. He remembered nights when Grace stayed awake, rocking 3 cribs at once. He remembered how she believed in him when investors laughed. He remembered the promise he broke. After the ceremony, during the reception, Daniel approached her again. "Why did you really come?" he asked. Grace looked at her sons, laughing near the dessert table. "Because they deserve to see that life doesn't end when someone walks away from you," she said softly. "They deserve to know that rejection isn't the final chapter." Daniel swallowed. "I thought you'd still be struggling," he admitted. "I did struggle," Grace replied, "but struggle builds strength if you let it." He looked around at the luxury, the chandeliers, the expensive champagne. For the first time, it felt empty. "Did you ever hate me?" he asked quietly. Grace paused. "I was hurt," she said, "but hate is heavy. I had 3 little boys to raise. I couldn't afford to carry hate too." That night, when the limousine arrived to take her and the boys home, photographers crowded around. "Dr. Whitmore, one picture." Daniel stood at the top of the cathedral steps, watching as cameras flashed, not for him. For her. For the woman he once underestimated. For the mother who turned pain into power. Before stepping into the limo, Grace turned back, not with anger, not with triumph. Just peace. The door closed. The limo drove away. Daniel remained standing there long after the guests returned inside. For the first time in years, he questioned his definition of success. He had gained wealth, but he had lost the one person who believed in him before the world did. Inside the limousine, Luke leaned against Grace. "Mom, are you sad?" She smiled and kissed his forehead. "No, sweetheart." Matthew asked, "Are you happy?" She looked out the window at the city lights. "Yes," she said gently, "because we didn't let someone else decide our worth." Mark squeezed her hand. And in that quiet moment, Grace realized something profound. Daniel had invited her to shame her. But instead, he gave her the perfect stage to show her sons what resilience looks like. The greatest revenge wasn't wealth. It was growth. The strongest victory wasn't proving someone wrong. It was proving yourself right. And sometimes, the people who try to embarrass you end up revealing their own emptiness. Grace didn't need a cathedral to validate her. She had already built her own empire, brick by brick, tier by tier, prayer by prayer. An empire called character. An empire called love. And that was something no divorce, no rejection, and no millionaire could ever take away.